widespread criticism from human rights organizations, governments, and activists worldwide. This presentation is not necessarily focused on China's actions and how exactly they violate the Uyghurs' human rights, but instead this presentation is mainly going to focus on what is causing China and motivating China to commit these human rights violations in the first place. China wants to be number one. Even more specifically, China wants to surpass the United States economically and politically. Now, how does China's desire to be a major world power and to surpass the United States relate to the Uyghurs' human rights crisis? Because typically when people hear the violation of human rights, they think of racism and racial supremacy as the cause. And while Chinese racial supremacy does play a role, some Chinese individuals harbor a sense of racial superiority over the Uyghurs, but this is not the primary driver of the state's actions. China's human rights violations against the Uyghurs cannot be attributed to a singular motivation, but rather a confluence of economic ambitions and political insecurities. The most significant driving factor is China's economic ambitions. The Uyghurs themselves don't actually greatly enhance or hurt China's economy, but rather it's the land the Uyghurs occupy that is the great economic incentive for China. Xinjiang, which is the region in China where the Uyghurs live, and it's an energy powerhouse, holding 40% of China's coal reserves, 20% of its natural gas, and significant wind power potential. In a rapidly industrialized nation where 60% of its energy comes from coal, control over this energy is crucial to China's growing economy and its economic ambition. Also plays a pivotal role in China's Belt and Road Initiative, or otherwise known as the BRI, a multi-trillion-dollar project aimed at establishing land trade routes connecting Asia, Africa, and Europe. Nearly all these routes pass through Xinjiang, making the region indispensable for China's economic and geopolitical ambitions. In the event of a conflict with the United States that might disrupt sea-based trade, these land routes would become even more vital. It's important to remember that one of China's goals is to also surpass the United States. Thus, if China can circumvent U.S. military power, and more specifically U.S. naval power, and rule out the United States' ability to cut off trade by way of an embargo, China can vastly enhance its national security. The BRI would also likely lead to greater economic prosperity for China because the BRI would likely enhance its ability to conduct trade across the globe. On a political level, China needs to ensure that the Xinjiang region and the Uyghurs never try to get their independence from China. This is one of China's greatest fears because all of their economic ambitions in Xinjiang would halt and an independence movement could inspire other Chinese regions to do the same, like Hong Kong. And China can look at the past and see other communist countries like the Soviet Union and see how political instability led to their collapse. China wants to prevent this. China's need for control and human rights. China perceives the Uyghurs as a threat requiring strict control, a common characteristic trait among authoritarian regimes. This drive for control is evident in policies of mass surveillance, cultural suppression, and the erosion of individual freedoms in Xinjiang. The CCP employs advanced surveillance technologies to monitor the Uyghurs' daily lives, aiming to preempt dissent before it emerges. Uyghur cultural and religious practices are heavily repressed. Mosques are demolished, religious attire and customs are restricted, and Uyghur language and education has been replaced with Mandarin-only instruction. This systematic erase of Uyghur identity constitutes an assault on their cultural and social fabric, representing a broad spectrum of oppression designed to assimilate and control the Uyghur population. The most infamous aspect of this repression is the network of internment camps in Xinjiang, labeled as vocational training centers by the Chinese government. Estimated to hold over 1 million Uyghurs, these camps are sites of severe human rights abuses disguised as efforts to combat extremism. Detainees are subjected to be forced indoctrination, compelled to renounce their religious beliefs, pledge allegiance to the Communist Party, and learn Mandarin. Far from mere detention facilities, these camps function as tools of forced assimilation and cultural erasure, aiming to phase out the Uyghur people and forcibly integrate them into Han Chinese culture. Collectively, these measures are calculated to control the Uyghurs, ensuring they pose no threat to China's broader political and economic goals.